subjects in his photos. Brandon?
Hi, I'm Brandon Salam. I'm, again, like they said, a current student. My predicted graduation year is 2023. I'm a Porter college student, and my current majors are intensive psychology and art. So as Allison was saying, my photo series, Tiny Big World, is about insects. Well, not just insects, bugs, because I include an arachnid. So forewarning, there will be a giant spider on your screen soon. This very much so was a COVID project. I started in 2020, and the series is much larger than what you'll see today and was included in John Dysyk's art cases. Uh, the project really encapsulates what we miss in our romanticization of like wildlife photography. We think of the safaris and the exotic jungles, but we miss a lot of the local stuff because of how minute details are and like incredible like animals that live around us because of how small they are, especially the bug life. And that was the big thing for me. I was going on hikes in the SoCal desert area, and when you think of wildlife from the SoCal desert valley, you think of probably, if you're lucky, you see a deer, but maybe mountain lion, stuff like that. And luckily I didn't see any of those, but the wildlife isn't as diverse as we think, is we perceive it as, not that diverse. And this project to me was showing how like colorful and much more diverse the SoCal Desert Valley is, and how animated these animals are when we can look up close at them. To me, it was very important to like go in and like have these like studies. And I've taken photos with macro lenses. I took photos with even a point and shoot camera, and I took photos with a telephoto lens, and which you'll see here with the spider, and later another subject. I used the telephoto lens and manual focus in order to capture the spider in focus, and later would crop in post. A big part of like this was really important to me as a project because like when I was very young, I imagined being on the National Geographic staff page, and I would go exploring. And so these types of photographs are how I explore the world. To me, adventuring with the camera was the correct way to do it, and I wanted to catch every little detail. And so therefore insects was perfect, and not just insects, but all bugs. I love the details that like you can capture, from the little bumps they have to the veins in the wings when you'll see later, and the fuzz on the bee. All of that was important to me, and it's something that's unique to these creatures because it's something that you don't see often with them. This photo right here, specifically, I was astonished by like how the sunlight beams just came through and I wanted to catch it. This was right after a rainfall had recently come through, and so it just, there was a moment, a lot of greenery and a lot of creatures had just come out, and I was like, this is perfect for a moment. The dragonfly, especially, much like the spider, was a photograph I used the telephoto lens for, and it was that moment of like, oh, I need to capture this, yet I don't have a macro lens. Well, I'm gonna make it work with a manual focus, and so I used a 200 millimeter lens and zoomed all the way in and used manual focus in order to capture it. And it's like I said, you can see the fuzz on its back to the beads on its eyes and the veins in its wings. And this was early morning, so that's why you get the beads of the water in the background that's unfocused. And this was just hiking in the hills, and I never thought I would see something so colorful in the Southern Desert Valley, because typically you get a lot of animals that have browns and tans because they're blending in with more of that light, that fauna and stuff like that, that is much more off-white. And so this was the final photo because I thought it was a good way to end the series, because you have every like creature, and then you have kind of this cycle, and it's a tiny big world, and there's a lot more to see than you would think. Even though it's so small, it's so big. And so that's why I titled the series Tiny Big World. And I thought I'd close with the dragonfly coming to an end. But yeah, thank you.
Wow, Brendan, thank you so much. That was really great. I felt like Ant-Man watching that. It is really a great perspective. And for anybody who has, maybe tried to do different things with photography, getting these kinds of close-ups or macro photos is no easy task, as Brendan was kind of, talking about. It takes a lot of trial and error to get it. So really great job. Thank you, Brendan. Okay, so we'll go on to our next photographer. This is Gabriela Mazzarello, and she is going to take us on her little mini travelogue. Looking forward to hearing her story. Okay,
Hi, so
Gabriela.
my name is Gabriela Mazzarello. I'm currently in Italy, so this is why you see a little bit of dark over here. I'm a Kresge 19 alumni. I guess a few fun facts about me are, well, I grew up in a city that is called Mexicali, which you can see in the upcoming photo. And here you can see El Centinela, and El Centinela is known as the guardian mountain of the city. It's very hot, so it gets to 52 degrees Celsius. So if you've heard of Death Valley, it's basically the same temperature. Yeah, and it's a very hot place. When I was living in Mexicali, I was really inspired to go travel around one day. However, I didn't have the economical means to do so. And this was back when I was in middle school. And I didn't have an iPhone. Obviously, I had a little flip phone, so photography was a faraway world for me. So later on, I moved to study in the US. And so I went to UC Santa Cruz. And in the next photo, you can see California. So you can see this is Lake Tahoe, which you're probably more familiar with. And I really love this balance of like water and forest coming together, which is a little bit of also of the essence of Santa Cruz, of a little bit of beach and a little bit of forest. And in this period of my life is when I was first introduced to photography in a serious manner. So a photo that you saw of Mexicali was, I took it afterwards. Here's where I learned like everything about photography, really. And I started to travel a lot more. And through traveling, my perspective of the world changed a lot. So I was exposed to many different landscapes, and I started to really get inspired. I later went to Italy during an exchange program. I'm actually an economics student, so nothing related to arts really. And here you can see, the blue water in Italy, which is very particular. If you've ever been to, for example, south of Italy, you'll see these beautiful beaches that have a very blue color in it. And also a green that is very intense. So after this, I really wanted to go to Norway. Norway was something that seemed, from when I was in Mexicali, this seemed like some faraway dream that I could never get to. But since I was already in an exchange program in Italy, I really had to travel around Europe. So I took the chance. I even borrowed money to get to Norway, and eventually I made it. It's a very cold place, definitely not for somebody who's from the desert. So I wore like 3 pairs of pants, like a lot of jackets and like gloves and a hat and so on. And my goal was actually to photograph the Aurora, which I eventually managed to do. Photographing the Aurora takes a lot of effort, and it also takes a little bit of challenging your fears. My fear here was the dark. And yeah, when you have to photograph under very low light conditions, such as in the case of the Aurora or any nighttime photography, you really have to be far away from basically human interaction, anything that could provoke light that could affect your photo. So I like this photo because when I compare it to the first photo, it's basically a mountain. And so I thought it was very interesting how it looked like two different perspectives from two sides of the world. And yeah, well, thank you so much.
Oh,
And
thank
thank you so much for the host for allowing us to share our work.
Thank you, Gabriela. Yeah, this is just beautiful. And I have to say, personally, it really speaks to me because it's one of my dreams too, is to see the Aurora Borealis. And I think my husband and I have decided that we're going to go to Norway to do that. So I am preparing for the cold. So thank you for that part too.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're going to have a lot of salmon probably and a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll go on to our next photographer is Doug Magnuson. And Doug is going to show us his very interesting take on spaces. It's kind of, it's some kind of street photography, which is what I'm really interested in. There's all different kinds of ways you could do street photography. I don't actually know that Doug calls it that, but that's how I look at it. And it's, you're going to kind of see what's there and what's not there. And I'll let Doug tell you about that. Okay, Doug.
There you go. I had to unmute. Okay. Hi, I'm Doug Magnuson, Porter College, class of '89. Went to School of Visual Arts in New York City for my master's, and thank you for including me in this show, first of all. I think it's turning out to be a great show. So street photography, that's a great, a big influence on me. You know, a lot of what I take photographs of, I do so on my travels, and I've been influenced by a lot of street photographers. These pictures, you know, generally I think of street photography as pictures with human beings in them, but these are all pretty much empty spaces. And that's how I came to choose these because, you know, the times we're living in and whatnot. You know, I thought these abandoned landscapes kind of emblematic of the sort of in-betweenness of, you know, what we're going through worldwide, and this sort of like state of limbo between activity and inactivity. And I had made a short film called Objects Also Die in 2008, and about sort of the decay of time and of objects over the past time. And I just wanted to revisit that theme for this show. Anyways, this first picture is from Bulgaria, which is, oh, that's the second picture. But the first picture was from Bulgaria, and this is
Seems to be.
I think Doug may be frozen.
Yeah, looks like.
Sure.
Not sure if we should
Hold off.
on.
And I want to remind everyone, if you have questions, go ahead and enter them in the chat. And you might have to, I think he went off and he'll come back in.
Okay.
Any questions for any of the photographers so far? You can unmute and ask if you want while we wait for Doug to come back.
I could ask Gabriela a question.
Sure, go for it.
Gabriela, I love the sensitivity to light and color, which was really sort of subtle and different in your pictures. Have you done any other visual arts? Or is that just something that comes naturally to you as a photographer?
No, I don't have any background really. Like, I did economics, and yeah, I've always liked the art, so I've always tried to do something artistic, but no.
Very nice, very sensitive eye.
Thank you.
I saw someone else had their hand up. Let's see.
I believe Richard has his hand up.
Okay. Richard, do you want to ask a question?
Sure. Also to Gabriela, I mean, you have great control and depth of field. Is there anything that you wanted to communicate, with your images, over anything else?
In what sense? Hi, Richard.
The beauty or the ruggedness of terrain. You've got a great, balance of focus and depth of field. And do you have like a mission in wildlife or natural photography?
Yeah, I mean, it's my favorite type of photography. I've tried other types of photography, but really, like, I feel like with nature is the place where I can really not only practice, but get inspired and I guess see beyond just like getting something, how to say, it's where I get more creative. So for example, I play around with the focus of the camera. So in that one where you saw like a little bit of the forest and the beach, I played around with like getting on focus of water, getting on focus of forest, and then getting on focus this thing in the middle. And so sometimes it just comes like by experimenting a little bit. Not sure if that answered your question.
Sounds like what I used to do a lot of underwater photography and video.
That's so cool.
But that's wonderful that you were able to get such good images and balance your light, depth of field and everything. That's not easy to do, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we are going to skip ahead. Let's see.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Come back to Doug.
And we'll come back to Doug. I don't want to share his photos before.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Thank you. The old technical Zoom, fun stuff.
Okay.
So,
all right.
we will
so move on to Carl, and he's going to show us his series of photos called The Cosmos. And, when I first saw this, of course, you think about the cosmos as being sort of, out there in the galaxy, but he sort of brings it all home. It was really interesting talking to Carl the other day as he was, because what I didn't know is he's really talking about the science of things, and it's fascinating. So take it away, Carl.
Thanks, guys, and thanks a lot to you wonderful hosts for setting this up. This is a lot of fun. So I'm Carl Mehling. I am Kresge 93. I'm reaching out to you guys from the Bronx right now. And this might sound weird, but I'm not entirely sure I consider myself a photographer, because for me, I reserve that designation for professionals and I don't want to muscle in on their territory. But I guess if using a camera makes you a photographer, then I am a photographer. And because cameras are so ubiquitous, everyone has one in their pocket now. It definitely allows you to improve your craft. If I am an artist in other media, so I guess I have a creative angle to my life. So photography, I guess, is a natural addition to that. Okay, I'm a photographer, whatever. Anyway, coming from film photography initially, you are restricted by the film and the amount of pictures you can take, and then the developing and the money it takes to do that, and filing them all. But having, you know, a really, really high quality camera in your pocket all the time allows you to focus on other things, focus and you know, not literally, figuratively. So one of the things that I really didn't understand when I was first taking pictures was composition. I would recognize it when I would see a well-composed photograph, but I had no idea how this magic was created. And, you know, it really comes from taking zillions of pictures and having them in your face right after you take them, and not having to wait to understand how you got what you created is really important and informative. So I've been a naturalist my whole life, and from as far back as I can remember, I've had my face glued to a microscope of some kind. And generally, I guess for most people, when you start using microscopes, it's in school, and it tends to be light microscope, where the thing you're looking at is very, very thin enough for light to pass through, and you're looking at the microstructure inside it. And it's very, very high power. But it wasn't until I went to college, pre UCSC, sorry, but before I went to California, was when I started using dissecting microscopes, which are entirely different. They're binocular, so you see in 3 dimensions, and they tend to take you into the surface of an object rather than the inside of an object. And I didn't realize until that point that that's really what I was interested in. I was interested in the textures of things, you know, beyond what was immediately visible. And, you know, a crack in an eggshell winds up becoming a canyon. And you realize that the patterns of nature are just differences in scale. The things that you see in the landscape, you can see in the vein of a leaf. And like was pointed out before, when people think of infinity, they tend to think of the stars and space and beyond, but there's an infinity of scale and detail in everyday objects right in front of you. So I've always been obsessed with looking at things really, really close. And when I review these photographs, after I chose them, I realized I have sort of an affinity for fluids or water, the behavior of water in its solid and liquid forms. And I'm fascinated with how water and other things, other natural things, behave the way they do, no matter what we present them. They act the same in nature or in a cityscape. So you saw earlier the snow on those stone steps. The snow behaves in the way snow behaves, and it will, you know, it doesn't bend to our rules. It does what it's going to do, and it shows its natural form in any setting that it's in. I tend not to manipulate the subject of my photographs in when I'm taking the picture. I may later color correct them and crop them and zoom in and things like that, because I am obsessed with the detail. But as a scientist, I tend to want to be more of a documentarian. I'm documenting behaviors and the actual way life is and the way nature works and moves. So like this spider under a log in a stream is just what he was doing, and in his own environment, and that instant of that configuration of the water. And it captures a lot of things that I'm really, really fascinated with. Because I zoom in on details in my mind in every setting, I sometimes get yelled at in art museums when I'm leaning really, really close to paintings, because I may not even be interested in the subject of the painting. I'm interested in how it was created and what it's made of and what the texture of the paint on the canvas is. And, you know, these natural behaviors, you don't have to go into nature to find them. This picture of ginkgo leaves is just a parking lot in New Jersey after a rainstorm, but it captures so many things that drive me wild about nature and light and reflection and scale and size and all those things. So yeah, that's my world.
Wow, Carl, thank you so much for sharing your world, because you do, it's like you see a whole world in a dewdrop there, you know, it's just beautiful. beautiful photos, and I love how descriptive you are and how you see the world, and you're really paying attention
Thank
to
you.
the little things. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so I'm not sure when we'll have Doug back, but I think I should go on to Janet now. And Janet will introduce herself a little bit more in a moment, but I will say that we're thrilled to have her. She is a photography teacher at Cabrillo College, which if you're not still here in Santa Cruz, then you certainly remember Cabrillo College. And so Janet, you know, she gets to do this photography for a living and have fun with it every day, and share her love for it with her students. She gets to experiment in the dark room and digitally and explore all the time. And so we look forward to hearing about what she's going to show us today. Janet.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you. I'm honored to be selected for this Slug show. And yeah, Allison kind of said some of the things I was going to say about how lucky I feel. But and Carl, I think it's funny. I think you're more of a photographer than I am, because I do way more mixed media, image-based stuff. But I don't like those labels anyway. But anyway, I since leaving UCSC, I have been fortunate enough for my career to be rooted in arts education, teaching and overseeing a multitude of photography techniques in both the labs at UC and then at Cabrillo College for some 28 years now. And the work I decided to submit is this Dead Low Tide series, which was created for an exhibition by the Center for Photographic Arts in Carmel. They were doing an exhibition called State of the Art, and it was their first time doing an offsite exhibition up here at Santa Cruz at the Blitzer. And so I was honored to be part of that. And they already had the work selected. And then, but not long before the exhibition, I went off with some good friends to Cape Cod. And I came back with some images that I was so drawn to. To their dismay, I talked them into letting me do all new work for this show. And this is that series, Dead Low Tide. I don't like to read, but I'm just going to read the little snippet that hung on the wall with them because it's part of it. So the Dead Low Tide series is so new. At this point, it is mostly just feelings. It just flowed out after a late summer trip. The extreme ebb and flow of the tide. What is revealed at dead low. Women wading through shallow pools of water across a vast landscape that the ocean will completely cover within a matter of hours, is also alluring, ripe with allegory and sensuality. And so I have a fondness for surprises that's generated by juxtaposing and layering imagery using semi-unpredictable media. So when I look back at all my work, I realize that I'm constantly setting up circumstances so that I'm surprised and entertained and challenged, and I learn from the process. So these are alcohol transfers. It's a way for me to use imagery and get layers to create something more. And it's really difficult to describe, explain alcohol transfers in just this little 5-minute snippet, but I will try, and I'm happy to answer questions. And also, I happen to be teaching my dream class this summer at Cabrillo that's combined process, where we will do lots of playing with transfers. And so if anybody's interested in learning more, but basically an alcohol transfer is where you would send this transparency film through the inkjet printer. And then you take that transparency and you soak it in a bath of isopropyl alcohol. For like 3 minutes, the image starts to wiggle and jiggle as the alcohol, as the gum kind of dissolves, and you carefully turn it over, and on a piece of like paper substrate, you gently press it down and pull off the plastic, and the inks stay in the paper. And it's really magical. But of course I needed more. I wanted layers. So I decided to print imagery on the paper that will receive the transparency and layers. And so like in this one, I crumpled up a piece of paper that I had scribbled on, and I scanned it. And it's the first time the computer felt like a right brain experience. I would be in the digital lab. I'd take the image I was working with, make it a little transparent, and start to think about what I want underneath in different places. So I'd create these backgrounds and foregrounds. And then the magic happens, the fun, because you can kind of plan digitally, but you don't exactly know how things will look when they marry. And there's a lot of unpredictability. You get little wrinkles and imperfections, which I love. So it's a very delightful process for me. And there's just lots you can imply. So like in this one, it's a paint rag that was on a sheet that was in the digital lab that I scanned to put under Erica's feet in the water. I chose to submit this body of work to this show because right now it's hanging in the Pajaro Gallery in Watsonville. And it's in a show called the Pajaro Gallery has every year their annual takeaway show, which is an amazing show. And you get to see live artwork right now if you're in the area. And it's a fundraiser show, and it has 78 plus amazing artists, all pricing their work under $300. So you can come in, buy something, take it off the wall, and they replace it. And so this would be a chance to see this work in person, and that show goes till May 23rd. And I can later put the link in the chat if anybody's interested, but it's Friday through Sundays, 11 to 4 is when you can go visit. So I think that's pretty much close to 5 minutes. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity for being invited.
Well, thank you so much, Janet. We get to see, all the possibilities, just the beginning, really, because I know for me, I have my camera and it's, pretty straightforward. So doing all this kind of more experimental thing is very different for me. And it is just so fascinating. And I also wanted to, for Janet, just let everybody know and thank Janet because she is very influential in the photography community here, which is, part of the reason that we do Open Show is to support the photography community and make it possible for artists to get their work seen. And so Janet has joined our team of Open Show producers. And so we're looking forward to our shows to come and you can find out more about Open Show Santa Cruz. We have a Facebook page, and it's also at openshow.org/Santa Cruz. So we do have Doug back in the Zoom room. And Doug, are you ready to go if we go back?
Yeah, I apologize for that. I don't know what it looked like on your end. On my end, everything just went blank. So.
Okay. Yeah, you would just look kind of frozen. So when we get back to your slide there, we'll just jump right in.
Okay. So I guess we were on number 2.
Yeah.
And remind us, where was this? The first one?
Oh, this one was in Bulgaria.
Okay.
And it
So
was just this really nice looking playground in the middle of town where there was no people, and there was no people at the school, and there were, and it was the middle of a sunny day, and there's not many sunny days in that country. It's pretty overcast, a lot like Seattle most of the time. It just had this ghostly kind of aura to it. So much potential for activity and playing basketball or soccer. And it just made you feel like you shouldn't be there somehow. And this one was done on digital. Two of these 5, this was film. 2 of the 5 were film and 2 were digital. And traveling with photography or traveling to photograph, digital has just sort of changed how you tend to take so many more photographs and then edit them down, whereas with film it was sort of like every moment sort of had a little bit of extra magic. But I like both so much for so many reasons. And this again was New Year's Eve. Y2K, and the end of the world did not happen that night. This was in East Los Angeles. I liked carrying my camera around with me at all time. And this was in between 2 meetings, and came outside and were headed into another meeting. And while we were in a meeting, a giant shootout happened just blocks away between the police and a big gang. And we had no idea until we came out of the second meeting, and we were surrounded. Literally, we were told to go back inside, and there was some guy on the loose, and I don't know. I love this picture because of the way the barbed wire circles are so perfect, and just how the shadow like leaps from the back forward, and how the wires in the front, it just gives this overall sense of a volume, but at the same time, I don't know, it has this essence of being very flat. Let's see, what's the next photograph? Oh yeah, this was taken from the back of a moving boat to the Lake District. And, this train went, for the most part, was just headed through wilderness and countryside, and there were very few towns in between. And, it was a really old-fashioned train, and I was taking all these photographs from the back. There was this little platform, and there really wasn't any rules. You could just walk outside onto this platform, and I held on tight with the other hand, making sure that I didn't fall off, because I figured, except for this little town and a few others like it, if you fell off the back of the train, that was it. No one was going to find you out in the middle of nowhere. Taking photographs while you're moving actually a lot of times has some very great effects, I think. I'm very much into motion, but if you can, somehow capture motion in some kind of sense of stillness, that's what these particular photographs are about. And the next one is, oh right, this is Las Vegas. In like 2007. This is a digital photograph, and I was living there for a few months and working, and found this little pool. This was not a vacant hotel. There were guests, and I don't know why the pool was empty, but the pool was full of, if you can look closely, full of tracks from skateboarding and a lot of grind marks and whatnot. And I just wondered if instead of swimming, because they had to keep the pool hot, they just allowed the guests to skateboard there. Or if people were there at night, it's just all these questions about when and where you could actually use this pool and how. Of course, I don't know, I was attracted to the geometry of all this and the nature of sort of, this was right across the street from one of the biggest, the Luxor, which is this giant glossy pyramid, which you want to start thinking about, that's a reference to millions and millions and millions of years of history, maybe not millions, but thousands. And here we are, this is the ruin, and that was, in the background was the modern architecture. Anyway, sorry about the technical difficulty. I'm really glad to be part of this. I love Santa Cruz. And I've had.
We were happy to get you back.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doug. Yeah, I'm glad. We're happy to get you back in the show, and to be able to talk about your photography. And again, to me, you talked about just kind of the spaces, and you said the geometry, and for me, yeah, the kind of the different elements in the photos, whether it's rectangles or these ovals, and the layering that you talked about with the shadows and the pole, and that was just fascinating. So thanks very much. Okay, so we're on to our next.
The wall wraps around it.
we're gonna skip ahead, and now we're here, and we're looking forward to seeing Susan's work. And let's just say that Susan makes the most of taking photos on her iPhone. So take it away, Susan.
Okay, hi. Thank you for organizing this. It is great to see Slug people out there. And I was Porter, but it was really College 5. I was the last year of College 5, and I studied creative writing, but I've always done various kinds of art. And when I got an iPhone 10 years ago, I just fell in love with photography and being able to alter the images that I take. This was taken of my daughter during this COVID year. She is doing Zoom University from home. She should be in Oregon. And I loved the shadows, that this is a bike bridge between Palo Alto and East Palo Alto. It's a fairly new bridge. And we've been doing, on our walks, I'll tell her to do some bell kicks. She was a theater person, and she will dance across the bridge, and then I keep capturing different images, and then I take the one that I really like, and I call it App It Up. So for those who have iPhones or smartphones that take photographs, I have so many apps that I use to enhance and change and make artsy. So this is not very apped up. This is more realistic of what it really looked like at the time. When we first started with COVID, I said, okay, day 1, and I went through 100 days, and then I said, forget it, we're in quarantine forever. So this is a photo of my daughter on the one rainy day we had in the Bay Area. She put on her Oregon gear, and we went to a different bike bridge. This one goes between Palo Alto and Menlo Park. And I used an app called Distressed FX, which is very moody, and you can really change a lot of enhance the moods of your photos. And I loved the way the leaves glistened, and I love the way the colors came out. The orange that you see is because it's frequently tagged with graffiti and it has been painted out, but somehow when I started apping it up, it brought out the orange, and there's a lot of trees there. And it's also a quarantine photo with a mask on. You can't see her face. We can see none of our faces as we walk around. People across the street, when they see you coming, it's a whole different world. But I take my phone every day and I take many, many photos, mostly of nature. And then I alter them. And when I discovered Instagram, I found a whole community of photographers, and I really enjoy doing that. This was like the biggest trip we took, which was to Pigeon Point Lighthouse on the coast between Santa Cruz and San Francisco. And this is a piece of wood from a burned schooner in 1913. It actually, the schooner went up on the rocks, and then it didn't look so good to have a lighthouse with this broken ship, so they burned it. But a lot of the stuff sunk, and this piece came up at Año Nuevo in 1983, and they brought it back to Pigeon Point Lighthouse. And I thought this was a neat image to look through the piece of flotsam and see the lighthouse. Again, this one is not particularly apped up. I probably lightened it up a bit so that you could see the lighthouse more. And I loved the way the wood is so distressed looking. So the last 2 photos are very much more of what I do, which is to take an object of nature and then change it in a more painterly way. And this is an app called Percolator that I used that converts the bits of light in the photograph into these circles. I really think of it as like Gustav Klimt, and I really like the gold way it looks. And I have used birch leaves a lot in my images. So it was hard to pick 5 images because I take thousands of photos. And but this is one of my favorites, and it was one of my favorite apps because there is this element of surprise. And when Janet was talking about her technique of mixed media, that is a lot of what I like in photos. I tend to combine photos together. There's an app called Image Blender where you can put 2 photos together. And the term app mashing comes from using many apps on one photo. So when I first started, I thought, oh, you use this app and you enhance your photo and you make it better. But then I realized you could run it through several apps and get entirely new techniques. And I love the element of surprise every time I make a photo like this. I'm going to go to the next one in a minute. Yeah, so this one, I love succulents, and I love the ability in the iPhone to make collages and to take one image and change it many times, making it different each time. So lots was going on in here. And I love color, and I love enhancing color and creating a whole world inside my phone. And the whole thing about Instagram is the ability to share it with many, many people. I did start printing and making cards out of my photos a few years ago. It was sort of like, get it out of the phone. And I've never as satisfied with what I print as what I see because of the backlighting on the iPhone. And I also use an iPad to paint on and combine the paintings with the photographs. So it's all about learning new techniques. I feel like I will never stop because there's always something new, and the technology gets better and better all the time. So I miss the Santa Cruz life, and we were laughing when we were preparing for this that almost all of us are from Kresge or Porter, and I know my son is out there who was a Crown graduate, and I told him we didn't have Nerds in the Woods back then, but now we do, and it's all a combination of art and technology, and Santa Cruz just keeps getting better and better. So,
well, that was a great segue into my comments about your project. This is art and technology, and it's just some of the comments I'm reading while you were speaking, Susan, that just so creative, beautiful, inspiring, and somebody was trying to follow you on Instagram while you were talking, but there were too many Susan Meade, so
okay.
put that in the chat. I think it was probably on your
It was on the first slide, but I'll put it in.
Right. Yeah, please do.
Swimmer Sue's. And that was the other thing about quarantine. I couldn't swim for 2 months. So because the pool was closed. So then I just kept walking and walking and walking. And it's been fun. And it's really fun to share it. I realized, for a lot of time I took pictures and no one ever saw them. So it's fun to have the opportunity to do this as well as share on.
Well, and again, I'll just kind of go back to Open Show and why we keep doing it, because like I said, we volunteer, and it's because we love, Laurie and I and the other, we love doing it because we learn every time, and it's so inspiring. The photos are just amazing. It just speaks to how, different people are. And so this is really exactly what we like to see in the Open Show Santa Cruz that we do. We opened it much more broadly to across the world, and this is what we get. So thanks, everybody. So now we're going to move on to David Stroud's, and for David's, I hope I'm not stealing his thunder at all. I know he's just going to talk very eloquently about it, but I'll just read a little bit from his description. You'll see that he has a very artistic way of photographing water and water elements. He says the overlapping and layering of reflections, colored light, and glimpses of solid objects corresponds to his feeling that reality is complex and its deeper layers are veiled but not invisible to our everyday awareness. So it sounds kind of deep, but it's just basically, it's like it's right in front of you, and how are you seeing it? So let's see how David sees the world.
Let's see. Okay, we'll wait for a picture here. I'm not sure if I can outdo my couple of sentences that already just got read. I was going to say with Susan, I guess I'm one of the more the veteran alumni here in the group. It's really wonderful to be part of this. All the photographs are so good and so different. I was not part of the first wave of Santa Cruz students back in the day of the Quonset huts and the trailers and stuff, but I was a little bit after that, and I was when it was College 5 also, before it was named Porter. And I wanted to say quickly, since this is an alumni thing, without getting involved in talking about lots of teachers and students, but anybody interested in the arts who's not familiar with a really inspiring and influential professor of art history, Mary Holmes, might be interested in looking into her a bit more. She was a very big part of Cowell College from the beginning for a really long time, and has artworks on view there, and you can find a lot more about Mary online and at Cowell. So she sort of, with some other teachers, Rosalind Holden set me off on a different path with their really inspiring art history classes and lectures. So I wanted to say quickly, I'm kind of more of a straight photographer than some people who presented today, but I tend not to get any ideas of projects before I take photographs. I tend to accumulate images over a period of time that kind of center around subjects or things that fascinate me or speak to me. So this is just one body of work among lots of others, but I do love this one a lot. It's I think maybe getting a pair of glasses when I was a kid got me into photography. I was so astonished by the beauty and clarity of everything that I was looking at. And photography was always a kind of a magic medium that distilled the visual beauty of things and the clarity of textures and places. And I still, I think, have that going on in these photographs. They're not amorphous, abstract shapes and colors, but you can sort of, you can see what they are, and they have elements of very clear reality. But they're really explorations of color and layers and light and movement. And as I said in that little thing that Allison read, I really have a feeling that although we live in this world of, you know, cause and effect and physical objects and things that we have to negotiate that have dire consequences if we ignore them, there's another dimension of reality that has to do with our feelings and time and memory and intuitions, that is something that we glimpse, but we can't see 100% clearly. And I think somehow these photographs, although they're very visual, connect with that sense I have that there's you know, there's another level or other layers of life that are behind what we're kind of aware of and doing every day. This one, I might just point out in the upper left there, it looks really blurry and amorphous, but there's actually, it maybe isn't so clear on the screen, but there's a little ripple of water there, and there's some elements of grass and things in the picture. It's a reflection in a creek up at Lake Tahoe that just was so wonderfully painterly, and I just love the way all the colors and forms and light and shade all fit together into some kind of order. Let's see, what else was I going to say here? Well, I think a lot of us today have photographed water, worked with water a lot, which is wonderful. It's sort of a thing that you can't photograph. It's all about, you know, what's reflected in it, and there's this constant shape of the feeling of movement and transparency. So it's a little bit of a unique thing to photograph, you know, with a camera. This one has the most in it that isn't water. Obviously there are these forms in the foreground, but this evening I was sitting by this stream and the beautiful flowers, everything was kind of all blending and blurring together. So there's this kind of musical feeling of these colors, light and change together with these living things in the foreground. There's actually a little bit of sharpness in there again, that maybe helps anchor all that flowing, blurry kind of stuff. Anyway, I think maybe I've said my piece. I hope people have enjoyed the pictures.
Yes, yes, thank you so much. As I said, David is both eloquent in his descriptions, but also in his photography. It's just really, really beautiful. And I think it's truly a gift to everyone to be able to see this. And I hope everyone remembers next time you're out looking at a body of water, what the possibilities are. So we've almost reached the end. I'm really looking forward to introducing you to Pedro. His work is entitled blue, and I guess what I want to, I'll let him tell you about it, but you know, blue, of course, can be a mood. And when you see his photos, it might invoke in you some kind of mood, but it's also very dreamlike, and it's just really stunning. So Pedro, please.
Oh, hi. Thank you, everyone, for hosting this event. And my fellow alumni, thanks for showing your work and talking about it. It's really just wonderful work. And it's really great to hear everyone kind of talk about their approach. You know, like today I got to hear everyone talk about it. And when we were preparing for this, I had to think about like, well, what am I gonna say? And it was really hard because I don't necessarily have like an approach or a plan, or, you know, like I want to explore colors like David said, or I want to go travel and take, you know, photos like Gabriela or Aurora Borealis, or do the layering. And what this made me do was realize why I don't think of much like before I go out and take the picture. So like this is my first time showing pictures publicly or virtually. I just take pictures pretty much for myself, you know, and it's kind of like my Zen moment. And when I go out and take pictures, I plan like the experience. So like plan like I'm gonna go hiking, or I'm gonna go to the beach, or I'm gonna go, or if I'm traveling, and I just happen to carry my camera, and then like, let's capture this moment. And I don't like, so, and I try to realize why I don't do any of this, like pre-planning. And I've tried, like, I really tried to like, oh, I'm gonna explore, you know, certain colors or feelings, or, and I realize why I don't. It's because I work, my work is a cinematographer, which also deals with images. And such as like everyone was explaining their preparation and how do they approach their work, cinematography, we do the same thing. We have to think about, you know, technical and creative and what emotions we want to portray and how do we help tell the story. So when I take pictures, I guess I just don't want to think of that, any of it, and make it relatable to my work so that it remains like a hobby. And it's like, so I guess that's one reason. And just this morning, I realized the other reason, which was, so again, this is my first showing. So because I never had an intent to like have an expo or a show or something, when I take these pictures, I don't have like a goal. So I don't go out and think like, I'm gonna explore blue, like whether it's the color of the feeling, which is in this case was the title of this. And I'll get into why it ended up being like that. But that's kind of like the general approach of like, of essentially not having an approach. And it took me a while to figure out why I don't do that, but it probably has to do mostly with, I just go and I take the picture. But then when I, you know, like when I see the pictures, a lot of them do have an intent or a meaning or some sort of feeling. And I had to think about that, but it comes out of what's happening with me when I'm there. So like most of these pictures are in the ocean. And the very first one that you showed where I have, it's just, that's me standing in front of the ocean. That day I was there just taking pictures, exploring long exposure. And at the time I just moved back to LA and I had no idea where my life was going, my career. So I was pretty much just like staring at the ocean while I was taking pictures. And I ended up walking in front of one of the exposures, and that's how I ended up with that picture. And basically what I was doing at the ocean was what ended up being captured. And so at the end of the day, it did have something to do with what I was feeling, but I wasn't there with the intention of capturing that specifically. So that's kind of like how my general photography works. It's like I'll be at a spot and then I'll just start taking pictures, and then of course, like I want to explore, you know, like long exposure or macro or telephoto or things like that, and have fun. But I never initially set out to go chase something. And so there are a few exceptions, which is like when I take pictures of the full moon a lot, and I do need to plan those. Like I don't have an intention, but I need to have a plan, because I need to know where the moon's going to come up and at what time. But aside from like the moon, I never really plan. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go on a motorcycle ride and it's sunset time, so I park along the beach and I take pictures. For the most part. And then I submitted one picture that has the word vote. And that was kind of a departure, because that one is probably the only picture that I've taken that I actually thought about taking. Like I wanted to take that picture. I thought about it a day before, and then the following night I went to the beach and I made that picture. And that one, you know, basically the purpose was back in November, let's get out the word, people go out and vote, it's important. But really that was the only one. So I went to like a spot where I've taken other pictures, and I just like wrote that and tried to share it as much as I could so that people would go out and vote. But yeah, that's kind of where my sort of non-approach comes from. It's more about me being in the place and just experiencing what's happening with me, whether it's like something super deep as like, what am I doing with my life? Or maybe I just watched the movie and I'm just thinking about it. Oh, that was a great movie. And so it's, and or when I'm on a hike or whatnot. So that's kind of how I end up with most of my pictures. And I think I might have done my 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, Pedro, that was wonderful. I know everybody can see in the comments I think they're stunned, because they're just like one word comments. Incredible, amazing. So it was absolutely beautiful to see these photos. And I just hope that everyone is inspired, that even if you don't think that you're a photographer, that you start to play a little bit like that, and you don't even have to have intention, as Pedro says. Maybe sometimes you have to have a plan.
Right.
Take your camera with you,
Right.
But start to play and see what happens. So I'm going to turn it over to Laurie, who's maybe going to ask some of these questions of the photographers that have been in the chat, and we can hear directly from them. You're muted, Laurie.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is exit the slideshow so that we can jump to any photos if you have questions. And let's see. And then if someone has a question they want to ask themselves, you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. And meanwhile, I'll be looking in the chat. So go ahead and ask if you have something pressing.
And we're going to be on until 5, so another 20 minutes or so. So we'll kind of do this, the question and answer, and then of course, if we'll do that maybe until the last few minutes, and then if people want to leave, that's okay. But we'd like to invite you to stay, and we'll just kind of open it up to reconnect with alumni, whether it's about photography or other things.
I mean, it looks like a lot of these questions are more comments on people loving the photos.
Well, I did have a question in there that I don't think Brandon answered yet, which was, have you photographed banana slugs?
Oh, yeah. So in the chat, I said, well, yes. I specifically actually Cowell National Forest is where I actually originally when I took photos of banana slugs for the first time when I went up to visit the campus before I had come to the campus. And it was in Cowell National Forest, and someone else asked if you still see them on campus. And if for my 1 year that I was able to like be on campus, I actually didn't see that many, but there was a lot less rains for my year there, so that could have been it. But there's a lot, but you see many once you go to like the forests and the national forests and deeper in the forests. But yeah.
So Brandon, are you you're going to be back on campus then in the fall?
Yeah, that's the plan, and it seems like everything's moving towards like they want everyone back. So I will be on campus in fall, hopefully.
Great.
I see a question here for Doug. And were your chosen pictures taken during COVID, or were they taken from past work and express the COVID times? I mean, I think you described it a little bit because the different locations, but the absence of people.
Yeah, they were definitely they're from I think it's 97 to 2007 roughly, but they were chosen to reflect the times. Absolutely. There, you know, the world without people in it. Basically, everybody's inside. Quarantined and whatnot. That's last year that we've held.
I'm scanning the questions too.
And Pedro, I was fascinated by that first photo. I thought maybe you layered that on with Photoshop. I didn't know how you how you got the effect, because you can kind of see through your body. But yeah. I guess if it was a long exposure, that's why.
Correct. Yeah. So
that's amazing.
That's what it was really. You can kind of see through it, and I was probably there about 2/3 of the exposure time. That was about 2-minute exposure. And yeah, I was there sort of just wondering what to do with my life. And I snapped another picture and I walked in front of the camera, and I probably stood there for a while. And then I realized, oh yeah, that photo's probably done by now. Then I went back and I'm like, oh, that's just kind of cool that it's semi-transparent. But yeah, that was about a 2-minute exposure for that one.
And that really makes it kind of dreamlike, like I was saying.
Yeah.
So Pedro, what you say your work is cinematography? So are you freelance, or how does that work?
Yeah, freelance. Whoever hires me. So like when I moved to LA, so I went to Santa Cruz, I came to LA for a little bit. Then I went to Mexico and I did 10 years of like daytime soap operas, like Mexican telenovelas in Mexico and Miami. But then I wanted to sort of change gears and I came back to LA. And now it's a little bit of freelancing, trying to find a niche, because LA is probably the hardest place to find work as a cinematographer. There's just a lot of us, and a lot of great people. And so yeah, freelance, short films, documentaries, independent movies, commercials, branded top, everything, pretty much.
Cool. And then I don't know if everyone noticed in the comments, there was a talk earlier this week, a photographer from National Geographic, amazing talk. I don't remember his last name, but Gordon.
Wiltsey. Gordon Wiltsey.
So Nikki said that his talk, along with all the talks, including this one, were recorded. So people can go back and look at those. And I highly recommend anybody interested in photography, go back and watch his talk. It was amazing.
Yeah, he was quite the pioneer. He was more of an adventure photographer. So he would be, in the Himalayas or just extreme locations, doing the photography that others hadn't ever really done before, or done as well, certainly. And he lives here in California, just up the coast a little bit, and just had a tremendous career. So it's pretty amazing. And he's a UCSC alum, so it's pretty cool.
Pedro, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
So this last photo, was this taken when the water was blue in the Bay Area?
No,
this past summer?
No, I could not get to that. I wanted to do that. This is also long exposure. And this might be like really long. Let me see if I have the specs on this one. Actually, no.
The bioluminescence this year looked exactly like this.
Yeah, I wanted to find it and I couldn't. So, but this one, this is also long exposure, but I'm really close to the shore, and all this is like the waves sort of crashing at the moment. So the brighter part of the picture is like the white water, and that's why it's a little bit more
gotcha,
brighter than the other parts, because like the waves are kind of coming in and out. And I was typing a response to Brandon
because he was asking if you had a preference for slow shutter speeds.
Right. So the funny thing is, I love taking like a long exposure, and because it's something I can't do as a cinematographer. I mean, unless you're getting really crazy. But the funny thing is, after I chose 10 pictures and I narrowed it down to 5, and it wasn't after I submitted it that I realized they were all long exposure. I mean, it kind of makes sense because they all sort of have the same feeling, but it wasn't on purpose really. But I do a lot of these, and then David asked about how do I figure it out. So a lot of it was because I have a really old camera. It's a 5D Mark II, so from 2008, and the ISO, I can't go high ISO because it gets really grainy. So if I want to take a picture at night and I could take it at like 1000 ISO, I'd rather bring it down and do the longer exposure so that I don't get too grainy. So I started by doing that, and then like when you're there with the water, you're like, well, if it's longer, what's going to happen? The water's going to come in and out. So, and then I just start exploring. So I'll do like a few 20, 30 seconds. And then if it looks interesting enough, or there's a lot of motion, maybe I'll do like a 2 or 3 or 4 minute. But a lot of the times I choose the exposure based on if it's really dark. Like I took one picture recently in Oregon and it was pitch black, like super black. And I had to do it, I had to leave the exposure for like 10 minutes. And that was just so that I didn't go very high on my ISO. And the picture's okay. There were so many clouds that it just blurred out the sky, so it didn't really work. But a lot of it just comes because of that. And then if I see something interesting, they're like, I'll decide like, oh, there was too much or too little, and then I'll push it either way just to get a variety.
That kind of reminded me of Gabriela's photo. Can you tell us a little bit more, Gabriela, how you accomplished this one? Are you still there from Italy?
Yeah.
At midnight,
it's really late.
1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I'm still here awake. Yeah, so this one basically, I mean, yeah, I don't know how to pronounce the name of this beach, but it was Skagsanden. I don't know how to pronounce it in Norway. So it's basically very north of Norway. You have to get away from any light pollution that could be there. And it was pretty amazing because there was a little bit of, it's a beach. So it's this frozen water. You have like snow around you, and then you have this beautiful mountain just up in front. But actually this aurora was not visible to the human eye. So when I first went there, it was just dark, and you just start taking photos like a crazy human because you can't see anything, and so everything is dark around you. And you eventually see an aurora just in your camera popping out, and I got really excited, and especially getting on focus. This mountain was honestly, I think I just got lucky because I couldn't really see the mountain, so it was just a lot of trying it for like 3 hours or so, and being really cold, and yeah, I just staying there with my camera like this.
Was it just you, or were you with anyone?
I was actually with someone else. Obviously, there's not that many people that would go to Norway, so it was my ex-boyfriend who was really passionate about going to shoot the Aurora Boreal. So yeah, this was like a trip that was very special because it's a very far away place where if I were to tell any of my friends, it would be like, no, you're crazy, we're not going to go there. So yeah,
Well,
it takes a
Gabriela,
lot of courage.
you said that that you were lucky to get this shot, but I do have to point out that you were there with your camera taking photos. So there's a lot more than luck to it. There was a lot of, determination, I would say, in getting this photo. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think also a lot of it is, I think one of the best lessons that photography left me was challenging a lot of my fears. In many of my photos, I had to not be afraid of going down something that seemed like, very dangerous, but also being smart about danger and not just going out to something that would just be, turn out to be a very bad experience. So then there's also levels of danger that I feel like a lot of photographers have to deal with, especially in nature. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then Carl, I wanted to highlight this. We've had so many discussions about water, but you told us something different about this photo. So I didn't know if you wanted to share about that. I thought that was interesting the other day.
So that's tree resin. And a lot of people they mistake this for sap. This is really, I think I was probably talking about the origin of amber. So because I'm a paleontologist, I'm always trying to see in nature what's happening now with respect to what it might turn into in 10,000 years or a million years or whatever. So resin dripping on trees is one of my favorite things to photograph. And ultimately I want to capture an insect having just been captured in the resin. But I think oddly, the most important thing I want to convey with this image is that it is not sap, and amber is not sap. And people should never call it that. It is tree resin, which is a totally different thing in a botanical sense. But, like I was talking about, I love fluids and reflection of light and things. This is a special example because that's not moving in the picture, but it conveys movement. It's incredibly slow movement, and it makes you think of water and how water behaves, but it's it's as static as the photograph in reality, which is kind of counterintuitive and fun.
I think there are a couple more questions for Carl.
Oh, there's one about the snowy stairs. Yeah. What can I tell you about that? It was sort of just a lucky picture. I was in my neighborhood with my wife taking a walk in a snowstorm, and it's kind of we don't live in the posh part of the neighborhood, but we're very, very close to it. So I guess most of the people go down south after it snows, and you get these perfect snow-covered landscapes without any footprints in them. And this one, it mimics a black and white photograph because it's just, winter plants and the stone, which are basically dark, and the snow, which is white. And the angle was perfect for catching all these contrasting planes of the stones and the stairs. It was just a moment, just a perfect moment.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Susan, we have one more question, and then we're gonna have to close it. But if you could add in the comments what apps you used for the birch leaf photo and art.
Okay.
That would be great. Oh my gosh, we could just talk forever. I love all these photos.
Yeah, just fantastic, everyone. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed meeting everyone. I'm grateful to the audience who's decided to check this out. Again, I hope you were inspired. I really love talking to everybody. I haven't myself been out that much taking photos because of COVID, and I definitely am gonna start doing that more. Of course, it's spring too, so that helps. And so I encourage everyone to do the same. Laurie, did you have any closing comments before we turn it over to Sheena?
No, just if you love this show and you want to see more photography, come check us out at Open Show Santa Cruz. We're on Facebook, and we'll have a show coming up in June.
Yeah,
So
and while they're online, they're free. When we do them live in
Yes.
person, it's not very much. It's $10. I think we have a student price too, Brandon. When in the fall we're going to have a show in November. Who knows? It might be live. So we'd love to see you all again sometime.
absolutely. Thank you. And someone from the alumni organization will talk too.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie and Allison, for organizing and facilitating such a great event. And also thank you to all the photographers for submitting and presenting your work today. I am definitely in awe and inspired by seeing the connection between the photographers' physical eye, creative mind, and your hearts to provoke emotion and what you've all captured in your photos. And I was inspired by what Allison said. I'm going to try taking out my photo or my camera and playing without any intention to see what I can capture. I also want to thank the audience for your participation. I hope you've all enjoyed the Alumni Week events. We have one more day left in Alumni Week, so it's not too late to register for other events. I also want to mention that we encourage folks to make a donation of any size to support UC Santa Cruz. The crowdfunding link is being posted in the chat box. I also want to give a shout out to the Alumni Association Scholarship Fund. This is near and dear to my heart. I know many of these scholarship recipients, and they're a $3,000 annual scholarship that's handed out to high need, financial needs students. This past year, we were able to give out 49 scholarships, and we hope to grow this fund. Any gift is appreciated and will help support both students and the UCSC community. And with that, I just want to say a final thank you and ask that everyone join me in the chat box to express appreciation and love to both Allison, Laurie, as well as the photographers. Thank you, everyone.